So I just wanted to start off this morning with a quick look at the Proverbs. And when we come to the Proverbs, what I like to do um, is not look at a full chapter, but dive into a single proverb because these are collections, as we see, I think, right back here in chapter 25. The people who compiled these put a little header on saying, hey, these are Proverbs of Solomon, or in other words, teachings, riddles, things that can be unpacked. This is what a proverb is. A proverb is like a single sentence that has all kinds of information and teaching and possibility for learning embedded into it. So I'll come to the proverb, usually the proverb of the day, but today for some reason I wanted to look at chapter 27, and I came to verse 18, and this is the proverb that caught my attention. Whoever tends a fig tree will eat its fruit, and he who guards his master will be honored. So there's two things in here. First, the fig tree being a very common tree back in the land of Palestine. This would have been something like we see examples that Jesus gives when he comes to the same land using the fig tree. So this is a common symbol all the way through the Bible, even into the New Testament. And I want to take a look at what this passage has linked. So before we try to draw conclusions about what the author's saying, we have to try to go back about 2,000 years. About 4,000 years if we're going in Solomon's case. What does this mean to tend a fig tree? Who would be doing the tending of fig trees? And what does the fig tree symbolize? 18R. So we go up here. This is a wonderful cross-reference Bible. So this says Song of Solomon 8:12. Now I'm really curious. And also note, there's a couple of other references even into the New Testament. So we might take a look at those, and this will be quicker than just a little short. But let's see what we find. Song of Solomon 8:12. It should be in here. Now this one is kind of unexpected. All right, let's see. Solomon also wrote this book. So let's see what he's thinking about when he talks about a fig tree and someone who, as we remember, tends a fig tree. In this case, I wonder if it's euphemistic. So my vineyard, my very own, is before me. You, O Solomon, may have 1,000, and the keepers of the fruit 200. All right, so lest we get lost in the whole text, and this being a text of romance and eroticism and sexuality, we're using this symbolically. Vineyard is something. Interesting. The vineyard was let out to keepers. Each one was to bring for its fruit 1,000 pieces of silver. Okay, that's what Solomon did with his vineyard. What she is doing with her vineyard, it's her very own. You, O Solomon, may have 1,000. Interesting. So 1,000 was what was traded. So basically she's saying, you don't have to bring me 1,000. Keep your money, basically. And the keepers of the fruit. Multiple keepers. This is kind of interesting. So let's not dive into this in terms of their relationship. But here, the keepers of the fruit kept, looks like 20% of what was produced from the vineyard. And so there's this relationship that exists between the one who tends to the fig tree and the fruit. So in this case, the reference is about 20%. So basically, hey, you may not even own the fig tree, but you will eat its fruit. And he who guards his master will be honored. Let's take a look at this just so we kind of grasp the whole passage before diving into the whole thing. And this is Matthew 25:21. I'm kind of curious as to how this connects. The one who guards his master will be honored. 25:21. Interesting. Coming near the end of Matthew. All right. That's what I thought. It was going to be one of these. So the one who guards the master's possessions. So this is the story Jesus told about the master who went on a journey and gave talents to the servants. Well done, good and faithful servant. You've been faithful over a little. I will set you over much. Enter into the joy of your master. So this is the idea of a steward. And so when we read this proverb, we're thinking about a steward tending a fig tree that does not belong to them and still eating of the fruit. And so basically the effort that you put in is the outcome that you get, whether or not you own it. Like we have a big tendency in our culture right now to really want to own something. And if I don't own it, why would I put my effort into tending it? This is a mistake, because whoever tends the fig tree, whoever puts their life into, it's not whoever owns the fig tree will eat its fruit, whoever tends the fig tree. Let's take a look at a couple more of these examples just to see if there's anything more for us to get. 1 Corinthians 3:8. I'm kind of curious how the people who made this particular reference book came up with these. And also, let's remember, 1 Corinthians was written by someone who really understood the Jewish culture, but also lived in a very different day. And this was written to more of a North Mediterranean. So like the people who lived here were in a different location. But here we have this idea. So now we have the euphemism of stewarding. Again, Apollos and Paul are servants through whom you believed, as the Lord assigned to each. I planted, Apollos watered, God gave the growth. Neither he who plants nor he who waters is anything, but only God who gives the growth. So basically, everything belongs to God, but the one who plants and who waters are one, and each will receive his wages according to his labor. In this case, Paul was saying, we're God's fellow workers, you are God's field. So when it comes to talking about the fig tree, it looks like these biblical authors are using the fig tree to refer to people. At least the two examples that we saw so far, which are used of farming. Let's come in, we have 1 Corinthians 9:7. Might as well take a look at one more here. See, this is why I always recommend getting one of these study Bibles that has some cross-references, because it helps us to dig in a little bit and see what the authors were talking about. Here we have, who plants a vineyard without eating any of its fruit? Or who tends a flock without getting some of the milk? And so whether this is, basically what Paul is using this for is he's saying, this always happens. If you're a soldier, you get paid for it. If you plant a vineyard, you expect to eat its fruit. So basically, where you put forth your effort, you will expect to receive. Last one, 2 Timothy 2:6. I'm surprised at how many connections were made to this proverb. So it seems as though this theme is showing up quite a lot in the Bible. This idea of what you steward, what you put your time and effort into will be the thing that rewards you. Now, granted, we're talking about a fig tree over there in the Proverbs. And let's see. If you tend something that's not a fig tree, you may not get the same kind of fruit. Let's see, did we go to this wrong one? 2 Timothy 2:6. 2:6. You're talking about work again. It is the hardworking farmer who ought to have the first share of the crops. What an interesting economic implication here. I feel like this is becoming a profound critique of our current cultural paradigm, that it is the one who owns the fig tree that will eat its fruit instead of the one who tends it. And perhaps this is because we have been caught up in greed and injustice. But let's look at this. He who guards his master. So in spite of our shifting cultural trends, here we have now guarding the master, which implies that someone is a servant or a slave. And I'm also grateful that we no longer have this structure in the Western world right now. Most of the world, which is great, except for, and this is the interesting thing, today being Cyber Monday, tomorrow Giving Tuesday, I'm actually encouraging people to take a look at the International Justice Mission, because there is actually a whole lot of slavery going on in which this principle is not honored, people's lives are taken from them and used not so that they might eat their own fruit from their work, but so that someone else can rob them of it. And so if this kind of injustice speaks to you at all, look at the International Justice Mission. They're hard at work rescuing people whose lives, whose freedom has been taken from them. So it's something I'm very passionate about. So go take a look at that. And if you want to come back and meditate on this proverb, I'll be thinking about this today because I've been investing a lot in a particular fig tree. And I like to think that I own my business as an entrepreneur. And the whole example here in the Bible is all about being a steward and having God be the owner of all things. And so just kind of trying to remember that even in the work that I'm doing on my own business, that I'm the one who's tending a fig tree. I will eat its fruit, but ultimately it's God who makes it grow. So looking at that, and then the one who guards his master. And as Christians, we have this idea that we are servants of God. And how do we guard our master in this respect? It's another interesting question, but in a lot of ways, I think it has to do with guarding the reputation, guarding the image. This is the idea of the glory or the fame or what people know about God is either safeguarded by what we do or we make him look bad. And so partly by guarding our master, one of these ways is by becoming a more pure reflection of that. And the one who guards his master will be honored. So when we look at a proverb, I'm just going to jump out a little bit more to surface level. Usually you have one sentence and then another sentence, and the two interact with each other in a way that also teaches something. So each line is its own teaching, and then the collection together is also a teaching. So thinking about how these two fit together, eating its fruit is this reward, and honor is another kind of reward. So the man who's writing this is a king, and so his servants there would have been a lot of military servants, so guarding the master. Yeah, I feel like there's a lot of trust involved in this. Tending a fig tree. And in this case, the master and the fig tree may be considered to be one and the same. And so tending a fig tree, guarding the master. Interesting. So it's almost like this idea in both of these, tending and guarding, is you are putting your own life before something. Tending means pouring your life into, guarding means sacrificing your life for, potentially. So there's a lot of risk and investment. You have like love, having these two sides. Will be honored. So yeah, that's about all I've got in here. Sometimes a proverb, it takes a little while to digest. So what we've done today is really just unpack the potential meanings of this first sentence, the figurative nature of the fig tree and what the fruit is talking about. We got actually a numerical value, which is quite interesting, that the vineyard keepers would usually keep about 20% of the profits, and he who guards his master will be honored. Interesting. Oh my goodness. So here we already touched on this idea of injustice, but imagine you let out the fig tree. You're the master now. You let out your fig tree to someone to take care of it, but instead of keeping the 20%, they keep 50%. They are no longer guarding the master. So guarding the master has to do with integrity, trustworthiness. And so then in addition to eating the fruit, you will be honored. Do you want to change your place in society? Honor is this idea of raising up, lifting up. And this proverb is like the way. Do you want to, let's just say, make more money? Do you want to be promoted? You're not going to do it simply by taking more of the fruit. You're going to do it by guarding the interests of the other people that you're connected with. If you become that kind of person, you will be honored. And what we see in the parable that Jesus told, the one who was honored in this way was given more fig trees. The faithfulness in what was little, you will be made faithful in what is much. So if you feel like your fig tree right now is pretty small, don't try to take more of the fruit. Live with integrity, honor justice, become somebody who the master trusts, whether that's another person who is in authority over you or whether that is God. Can you be responsible with this fig tree, which often stands for the lives of other people? Could be a business, could be a church, could be a family. But do it with integrity, do it with trustworthiness. Guard your master, and you will be honored. Wow. What a cool proverb. Like, isn't it so interesting how the more we circle around and we know how the proverb is structured rhetorically, we can kind of dig in, we can see these connected ideas, and that just helps to unlock it in the mind. Like, this is so fascinating to me. This idea, both attending the fruit, receiving the reward, and being someone who does this by guarding the interests of the master, whatever employer that might be. You live in integrity, you guard their interest, you will be honored. Well, take that. I think I'll stop there for today, and we'll probably keep on doing a couple more of these proverbs because they're really beautiful instructions for building a life that is rich, rewarding, meaningful. And there's even some valuable insights on relationships, and when we hit those, I'll probably put them into my channel on that. So if you have any questions, feel free to drop them in a comment below. Love to hear from you. Cheers.